maintain, and
Okay.
continue to ensure the quality of the product. So that's one approach. And then,
Okay.
if, for an example, you are in a position where you're scaling and you've already implemented tools. So I've worked with startups where they have already tools that they've implemented,
Mm-hmm.
but of course, a lot of times it's such a different set of expertise, and every engineer has their own set of tools and expertise and able to give feedback. So they would need someone like myself to come and say, hey, okay, we would like to consolidate this, or to kind of see, are all of these tools that we need, or is there something more efficient or more beneficial that would help us be more productive in our process, in our development life cycle? That way, it's basically to minimize and reduce friction points,
Okay.
and to identify gaps and remove those along the way by just streamlining the set of tools that they are using.
Okay. So, like, so do you come in at what stage in the software development process do do you does QA sort of start in?
QA would actually start right within so right after we gather requirements, the analysis, design, and coding. Usually, testing comes in right at that point.
Hmm.
Um, and that's really where QA can actually start coming in. I'm not sure. Do you need me to start presenting, or is this?
Oh, you're gonna go through some of that in your
Yeah, I'm
presentation.
not sure. I was like, he's asking excellent questions, so I'm not sure if that was.
Oh, no, 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 no. What I was just trying to make kind of kind of just get a feel and make sure the audience has a
Oh,
feel.
got it.
But for yeah, because what I was trying to think. So once you get a kind of like a software design spec or something, can
Oh, I
you
see.
start implementing your predicting what your testing is going to look like? That's what I was trying to figure
Oh,
out.
I
What part of
see.
the process do you kind of make sure you do you actually have your idea what how you're going to test it before you actually start developing the software? I guess
That's actually an excellent question. So with startups, it would actually start with the design phase.
okay,
So once you have the design phase, you can actually start thinking of what it is that we want to implement as a testing strategy.
okay,
So often they would have also some sort of management tool, like such as Jira, where they're able for their software development lifecycle. That way, they can specify the specific components in small
hmm,
bites. And then right within the Jira story, or when we specify that main functionality, right within there, you can actually specify what it is that is a non-negotiable to test
okay,
for that feature.
gotcha,
So you can actually start from the design phase,
okay,
or you can wait till after they've developed the feature and have QA test it.
gotcha.
And I've done both, and the design phase came way more useful when we were implementing automation.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and the reason being is because right within the design, the mock designs, we would
Mm,
actually identify the test IDs. So each element that is drawn out, the button, the sign in,
okay,
we would actually give it a test ID or a specific name. That way we can actually identify what that element is. That way we can hook the automation to the developer's code. So,
gotcha. Yeah, so that's the kind of what I definitely wanted to make sure the founders kind of understand. So, but if you're hiring a outside developer to build your MVP, how does that work with the QA? Are you dependent on the people you hire to do the QA, or what?
if I understood the question correctly, if we have a developer offshore, how would
Yeah,
then
yeah.
the
So
QA?
it doesn't have to be offshore, but it's just they're not um, they don't you hire them as a contractor, not as an employee to do the development. I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay, everything starts with whether it's a contractor or actually an in-house employee.
Yes.
We always break down the requirements into small pieces and
Okay.
then determine how they will be implemented and what resources will be needed. So when we actually break down these JIRA stories, you include within there as part of the requirements as the definition of done that it must have testability in mind. So for an example, you can include unit testing,
Okay.
which is something developers are responsible for when they're actually developing the software.
Okay.
And all unit testing does is it tests out the main small features that they have developed so they can get feedback that at least the main functional flows are actually working as expected. So what the way that would work, or to streamline that a little bit better, is make sure it's included as part of the requirements, as the expectation from the developer.
Yeah. So like, so I wonder sometimes if a founder, when they're hiring somebody to develop something for them, do they consider the QA part? Do they just assume the company is going to do the QA stuff, and or do they? But what you're saying is just make sure it's in the requirements.
Yeah, the requirements will make sure that it's basically to uh, avoid negative experiences for the user,
Hmm.
and also to avoid the wasted time and where now the developer has to go back and fix issues that later down in the development life cycle. So the earlier you can implement quality checkpoints, the better for the application.
Okay. Does
Yeah.
anybody have any questions out there before we go any further in this? Because I wonder sometimes because I hear a lot of stories about founders actually hiring people to do code for them, and they they just don't know what's going on, and then they end up having to hire somebody else, and it's just a tough cycle to get in.
Yeah. One way is like back to, the program that you have is resources and educating yourself ab-
Hmm.
um, about the importance of quality code,
Yes.
and making sure that even if you hire someone, you need to know enough about quality development of these features, or what are the non-negotiables that you want to implement when they're
Hmm.
actually delivering code. That way you can avoid these that cyclical pattern. So I definitely hear you on that one for sure.
Yes, yes. So that's kind of because I hear all these stories and I see all these things, and I just don't want our founders to get into these traps. But
Yeah, educate yourself. There's actually books that I've purchased about developer code with testability in mind. And once you grasp that understanding, you can actually start putting that as part of the contract when you hire the developer,
hmm.
and making sure that you actually check those things. Maybe hire another developer to check that the developer implemented it.
Yeah, yeah. So when think about alpha testing and beta testing, where does the QA come in there?
In beta test, that's actually a very good question. Beta testing would be just having a prototype and you're still putting it in the hands of the users.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, because you that at that point the users actually are playing with it, and so but supposedly you would think that at the beta test stage you're still trying to find the bugs in the software, but it's almost it's to me it's kind of confusing if it was QA properly, but you still need to get users to play with it to kind of find stuff that the test didn't uncover.
So, from my experience, when we would, so beta, when I think of beta testing, I think at that phase, that's actually an excellent question. You really got my brain thinking there.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah,
So,
because like Quinn, I think he's probably getting this software beta tested. So the question is, you know, should did his developer already QA everything? But yeah,
so here's the thought process.
okay.
When we're developing essentially a software and we're still in the beta testing phase and we're trying to develop it to at least be in a position to put it in the hands of the user.
Yes.
That type of feedback would be required for developers first,
Okay.
because they're essentially trying to identify what are the non-negotiable features based on what we've the minimal viable product that we put in the hands of the customer.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
as a developer, I would basically do my research, do my best to implement an application. But once I actually put it in the hands of the users, for an example, a teacher, I then get the feedback where they don't really care about this feature that I thought that they did. So then I can remove that feature altogether.
Hmm.
Or for an example, they start to ask for, or they start to call out certain things that may be a defect, but
Hmm.
they have lack of understanding that that's how the feature should work. So that's also one piece of feedback.
Okay.
Uh, and then once they actually get that solidified a little bit more, that's where then QA could come in as well.
Okay.
I've also seen startups ask QA to come in where I would volunteer and kind of help out in the beginning
Okay.
and give them feedback, because sometimes listening in on the customer and really understanding to kind of separate between, is that really a complaint? Is that really feedback?
Hmm.
Do I really need to remove this feature, or do I need to completely add something different, or maybe reposition the feature?
Yeah. I got one last question. I just realized this with this with the way software is delivered now, you know, updates happen daily, and stuff like that. So how do they manage all the QA process and all of that?
So the QA part of the QA process is to uh, so here's from my experience.
Okay.
The startup that I worked with, there was various startups, which I was really grateful they implemented Google Analytics.
Okay.
They had some sort of Google Analytics tool which informed us the top platforms that the user was using, the browsers that they
Yeah.
were using, the version that they were
Yes.
using on their iOS devices. So
Hmm.
when we speak of the so many updates that kind of come across when we're developing applications, we try to focus on what are the top 5 devices that our
Okay. Gotcha.
users are mainly focused on, and then from there, implementing a test strategy or a test plan around it.
Oh yeah, I didn't realize that. But yeah, that sounds neat. So yeah, you had some slides you want to show us and the audience. To feel free to jump in and ask questions at any time.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and share my screen, and as he's mentioned, feel free to ask questions. You're probably going to help me out because I'm not going to be able to see the chat once I share my
Okay,
entire screen.
I definitely can help you out on that. Yeah.
Okay, so the entire screen there.
Okay, I'll get
And,
it up there. Yeah.
okay, so today we're going to discuss how quality assurance services can elevate your product and boost customer satisfaction within your startup or whatever phase you are in your business. So I want to start by defining what is quality assurance, and actually some of it we've discussed, but this will kind of give a visual and a breakdown, so I won't spend too much time on it. But this is essentially the process when we're thinking about the role of QA tester in software development. The first part is the requirements. And it's really important to kind of spend your time with requirements in the research phase and understanding, because that's the process where we gather and define what a software system should do, including its functionalities, features, and also taking consideration its constraints and limitations, because the product has to be very specific. We don't want to offer our product to everybody's. Sometimes picking something very specific is more useful in the beginning. The next one is the analysis. And the analysis is really the process of breaking down the requirements into small pieces to determine how they will be implemented and what resources will be needed. So this is where we take everything that we have from requirement phase, and then we just break it down into Jira stories, into basically small user stories where the developer can now take these small user stories and implement these features. The next part is where we talk about the design. So what is the look or the feel, the plan or the blueprint for the system? This includes the architecture, data structure, infrastructure, and algorithms. So this is what does the UI look like and what does the backend look like? So, and this is actually a very important phase, and sometimes QA is involved in the design phase. And as you see here, QA can be involved after the code has been developed. The next part of the process would be the code. And that's the process of where, of course, the developer is writing the actual software program using specific programming language and following the design and the analysis phase. So they're taking both aspects of the design and the analysis phase and then implementing that into their code. Once that's completed, we then move on to the testing. And that's the process of where we are evaluating the software for defects, errors, any inconsistencies, and ensuring it's meets the specific requirements and quality standards that we've specified. I'm a huge advocate for including the quality checks in the analysis and the design phase, especially as a startup, because back to your point, that will alleviate that type of rehiring someone to kind of fix someone else's code. And it's such a pain point to be in. So to avoid that, education and making sure that you include the quality within the analysis phase and the design phase is very critical for startups. And then after that, of course, we know the deployment, where basically the software is into the production environment and it's making it available to users and ensuring that it works as intended. So that's basically a breakdown of the process, and QA can sit right within the design process or after, depending on the nature of the business. Like I said, I'm a huge proponent for having QA in the beginning. Before actually I move, did anybody have any questions? If there's any questions, or can I proceed? Okay, I think we're good. I can't see the chat, so I'm assuming we're okay. So the next thing is I want to talk about what types of testing are involved. I'm not going to go into every single type of test, but this will give you exposure as to some of the type of testing that I, as a QA lead, can come in and contribute to or help out with, and to also be exposed to. So as you are developing your software, we usually tend to start off with the manual testing. And the manual testing involves the human intervention in to manually execute test cases and then identify defects in the software. Manually writing out step-by-step what each functionality or feature is in your software is extremely important and will actually come to serve you well if you have it available, even if it is in an Excel spreadsheet, as a startup. The next type of testing we have is automated testing. And this involves using software tools to execute pre-scripts testings on a software application. So you need the manual tests in order to do the automation. And if you don't have the manual tests, or for an example, the steps for a specific feature, then a lot of times a tester would do something called exploratory testing. And exploratory testing is exactly as it's defined. You're clicking around, identifying the features, and having to write out the expected behavior on the current state of the application. And then once those are written out, then you can proceed with automation. Then after we have manual and automated, we have 4 different types of testing, and there's plenty more, but this is just for the sake of time and just to give you some exposure that will be implemented whether you're doing manual or automated. You will still do functional smoke, capability testing, or regression. So capability testing is just to ensure that the product works as intended on different devices, platforms, and browsers. So when you're like developing the code and thinking about the analysis part or the gathering the requirements, that's where we define in details what type of devices, what type of platform, what type of browsers do we want actually this developer to develop our application. That way, and that's will be aligned. That will all also identify what a tester will have to test for, is depending on these specifications for developing the code. Then we have something called functional testing, and this ensures that the product meets the functional requirements and specifications. We also have something called smoke testing. And smoke testing is actually to ensure that the product meets the functional requirements and specification. I feel like this actually has the same definition, or maybe I actually made a mistake in defining this. But really what smoke testing is you take a set of your manual test cases. Let's say we want to make sure the login as a user, I need to be able to log in to my account on Amazon. I want to be able to navigate and see the history of my products. I want to be, as a user, add something to the cart. I want to be able to successfully check out. So these are basically the non-negotiable that must work for the user, fall under the category of a smoke test, because we want to avoid fires. We want to avoid fires in our application. And then the other one is regression testing. And regression testing is very interesting. What this is it verifies that the recent code changes in a software application have not advertently affected previously working features or functionality. In layman terms, what this is let's say you created a login page, and the login page has only one button. So that's the existing code within the application. So now developer number 2 decides to create another button on the login page. So now we have new code introduced with existing code. So regression testing is to basically make sure that the new code that is combined with existing code around that specific feature is still working as expected, because a lot of times it makes bugs actually surface. So that's really what regression testing is. So that's basically a higher level explanation of it. And does anybody have any questions about this before I proceed, or feel free to interrupt me because I can't see the chat?
No questions yet, Amina. So
Okay.
keep rolling.
Awesome. Okay. So now the next thing I would like to actually show you is I would like to walk you through a live demo for manual testing and an automated test, just for you to see what that looks like. So let's say we have an Android application and the platform name is an Android. We want to specify the version, so it's version 10. The device name is Pixel 4, and we want to test out the contact page. So we'll create a scenario, and the scenario is basically a happy path to create a new contact within our contact page. So some of the steps would be as follows. Launch the contact page on the Pixel 4 device. Click on the red plus button to create a new contact. Verify that all the required fields, such as the first name as you see here, the last name, the phone, the mobile, are all visible and actually present on the page. And then being able to submit the form with valid information and verify that the newly created contact is displayed. So that would be like some of the test steps that we would go through. Let me actually open this up. I wanted to show you guys a live demo of this so you can see what that looks like. So this is actually Android Studios. It allows you to pull up a couple of emulators or simulators of an Android device on your computer. And if we are to actually go through some of these steps, essentially what I want to do is, if we click the home button, we're going to click deny, go back. So we're going to go to the contacts page, click the plus button, add a user, give them a phone number and then further. So that's too many numbers. And after that, we can click save. And then we just want to make sure that the contact that we've created is actually been created successfully. So now that we understood basically how a manual testing does, and this is just a happy path, there's also, we can go into very extensive detail as to, after we've successfully created a contact, the user should be able to click on the edit button, modify the name, be able to click save, be able to click edit again. And as you see here, we have the caret here, which provides further fields on the contact page that require further testing. We have the prefix, the middle name, the suffix. If we scroll down, we see here the mobile has a list of options to select from. So each element, each functionality would be selected and tested and verifying that it's actually behaving as expected and that we would be able to still save the contact on our contact page. So, and all of these are actually various small scenarios that we write out manually to test out these functionalities. So this is just one example of manual testing, and then also testing out the negative path. So what happens when I input, for an example, this is a first name field. If it's taking in numbers, which is unusual. So is there specific characters that it should not take in? Is there, will it display an error handling, please make sure you input, X amount of characters in this field, etc. Can you save a user? You can actually save it without the name. That's very odd. Anyway, so that's basically manual testing. The next thing that actually I wanted to cover and show you guys is, what does automation actually look like? So I would like to actually demo an automated script for you. That way you can see that, what's the benefit of automation. So as a manual tester, you can see here that it can be tedious over time to repeat the same manual steps within a 2-week sprint, because usually in an agile methodology, you have 2-week sprints for a development lifecycle from the time of where we start the sprint, and then they develop the code, then it ends up in QA column where QA start to test, and you're having to repeat the same set of steps again for the contact form. So what do we do then in those scenarios? What would be an automated script look like? So what I'm going to do is actually pull up the terminal here real quick, and 8 p.m. I'm going to run the server real quick. And this is just one of the dependencies that's required for APM, which is essentially a server with the client and writing out the capabilities. As you can see, I've specified it's an Android. The version is 10, Pixel 4, and then also what type of page that I want to test. So I'm going to go ahead and actually execute this for you. And as you can see here, it'll click the contact. It'll actually input the username, last name for us, the phone number, and it will save. And we'll be able to verify. So you can see here, it actually ran the test in a matter of seconds. So now imagine testing out every main feature and functionality within seconds and receiving that feedback about your application. That way, if anything fails, you as a developer or even if you hire a developer, they're able to actually get that feedback that they need to fix the application. So I'm going to segue now back to the presentation. So that was just a quick demo of what manual and automation. So as you can see here with automation, it's faster and more efficient testing, increased test coverage, because all you do is basically continue to add automated tests to the existing repository, and ultimately you will have a shared understanding of all the functionalities and how the behavior should be in the application. It also improves accuracy and reliability, because as sometimes in manual testing, these mundane repetitive tasks, sometimes things can be easily overlooked. That's why with startups, the way I did it was I would actually put time on the calendar every week, and I called it a testing party. And all the developers, including myself, would actually be testing together the manual test cases. And that's one of the ways that we can actually improve the quality, is making sure all the engineers come together and actually partake in testing. It also helps reduce testing costs. And then also better software quality and customer satisfaction, because you're able to speed up that feedback loop, and to get that feedback about your software is very important. So this slide is just going to cover a little bit about the cost of cutting corners. What happens when we don't implement quality? And we've mentioned it a little bit earlier, when we don't take into consideration some of the things we need to when we hire developers, and they don't think about quality up front. So some of the negative impacts is the product with defects, errors, and inconsistencies can actually harm a brand's reputation and reduce the overall quality of the product. And that's one of the things that we want to reduce and minimize, even when we have a minimal viable product, because even the product itself has to be in a very stable, not only stable, but being able to, the user has to be able to use it, and it has to be functional for them. The other negativity of not considering quality is higher costs. And companies lacking quality assurance or thinking about quality upfront process may incur increased expenses associated with identifying and correcting defects during the later stage of development, or even after product release. And I've seen both. I've seen even on enterprise companies as well, where it was released to production and it wasn't caught till then. So if we don't include the thought process of testability in mind, that does our application work? Is it doing what we want it to do? Those are some of the negative impacts that it has. The other one also is to reduce customer satisfaction. So as we can see, is we have a lot of application, whatever industry that you're in, people have a lot of choices. So it kind of sets the bar a bit high to think about quality up front. It's not something that we want to compromise on, because if there's too much negative impact or poor customer experience, defects, errors, or inconsistencies, that's going to reduce customer satisfaction and loyalty over time. And we want to avoid that. Lack of stability is another one, and also there could be compliance issues. So depending on the application that you are developing, if it's going to be, or what market also you're serving, we want to think about, some of the compliance that has to be included within our code. That way we can, avoid certain, legal or financial consequences down the road as well. But some of the positive things when we do include quality, you're able to identify and address defects, errors, in product development process early on, especially if you have QA upfront from the design process, which I highly recommend. Ensuring enhancing customer experience. When we get that feedback that we need upfront internally amongst ourselves as a team, we know that the feature that we are going to deploy into production, of course, is we can trust, and it builds brand loyalty to our customers. Long term, it reduces costs. So it's basically the opposite of the negative part. So it reduces costs because, of course, we were able to fix issues before they hit production or later down in the development cycle. Faster time to market. So as you've seen in the automation, if you have X amount of test cases that are automated, there's a much faster feedback loop, which allows you to deploy much sooner. And of course, the competitive advantage of thinking about quality upfront is it allows you to differentiate yourself from competition and build a strong reputation for quality. So people will know that your product is quality. I know that when I am on this application, there's no issues. I don't have to sit there and try to find an alternative or download a different application, etc. So what's the proposed next steps actually? Once we've understood the process, we've walked through like a manual and an automation test. That way we see what that looks like. So it'd be awesome to connect with you guys and identify the most suitable QA process to meet the unique needs of your business. And we would basically analyze and compare various technology tools or test strategies that will help your business and scale and grow while being budget friendly. Because as a startup, we want to be very mindful and be cost effective, which is something that the program actually is very mindful of, and that's actually very cool. So some of the services, you have the manual testing, which I can help out with, the automated tests, or just coming in and giving you an implemented QA process. Even if, for an example, you don't have a long-term QA, you can have a process in which that you can implement, that you can commit to, that you can sustain over a long period of time, and that it's going to help you long-term. So just key strategies. Of course, we would sit there and assess your company's current quality assurance practices and identify areas of improvements. So all starts really with a conversation. Where are you at in your process? Is there anything of this nature has been implemented or thought about? Then developing a quality assurance plan that's tailored to your company's needs and goals. And startups are very unique, like I mentioned. It would be something very specific and tailored and very simple to implement, because at the end of the day, you're the one who's going to have to be working with it. You're the one who's going to have to be implementing it. So it has to be done in a way that's cost effective and smart, and that can sustain itself over time. Also, being able to implement, if there's any training involved, or you need any assistance with metrics or reporting mechanisms, those are some of the things that we can also talk about. Providing regular reports and recommending. Also, this is essentially if you have someone like long-term, if let's say you're in a position where you can actually bring in a dedicated QA, this is something that you want to consider, is someone who can actually provide regular reports and recommendations over a long period of time, where to improve, just continuous feedback on how to improve the whole QA process, or the QA, the way that the application is being tested. Also providing regular reports and recommendations for QA within your QA process. So I want to end by, I love this quote: quality is never an accident. It is always the result of intelligent, intentional effort. So
Fantastic.
yeah. So that's something to think about. So thank you so much, you guys, for listening to me. I know that was a long drawn out. So I'm Amina, as mentioned. I'm passionate about quality, and then we can connect on LinkedIn or through my email. So Thank you.
Fantastic. So, audience, if you got any more questions, I do. I probably got a couple more up my sleeve here, but I'll give the folks in the audience a chance to chime in if they have anything. So the yeah, as a as a founder, you're going to like so when we do our 90-day course, the founders have to kind of design their solution as far as the MVP. And yeah, so I think just being aware that there's there is this quality assurance thing, and you need to be thinking about it because you don't want people to get your application and things doesn't work. I had an experience yesterday where I had to um, interact with the developers. So the the startup science they pushed out a update yesterday, and so it was working fine on the computer, but when you put it up on your phone, it was giving some issues, and so when I got this email from one of the users, one of the founders said that it wasn't working, and I'm saying it's kind of working on my phone, but then later it stopped working on my phone, but it turns out, they did update it and it worked fine on the desktop and laptop, but they had a caching issue on the phones.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's why I was asking the question earlier about when you continually updating on a daily basis, or they pushing out these things. I just how do you ensure the quality when you just continuously updating stuff, you know so often.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Burcell has a question there. It's what are the baseline costs of your phenomenal services? And the phenomenal services, okay.
Well, each business honestly is different. And I would love to first have a conversation. So if like I would love if you email me, we understand your business model, where you're at, and then we can just tailor it where it's a happy medium for both of us, you know. So because I completely understand the whole startup thing. I've had a startup. I've bootstrapped. I've built a minimal viable. So I understand. So feel free to email me, and then we can definitely chat further on that.
Yeah, so that's and I think it's that's why we're kind of glad we connected, because our founders need to be aware of the resources that they can have. And to be honest with you, I didn't know we had a QA person in our community here, so that's that was neat to meet you and connect with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's mutual.
Yeah, so like so there's a lot of no code stuff going on now. Is quality an issue for a founder that actually builds the application off the no code stuff?
You know, I'm not too familiar with no code,
Okay.
to be honest. So I don't know if I can speak on it.
Yeah, so like so in essence, I guess you got a lot of pre-built stuff, and you're just
Oh, I see.
organizing it based on how you want to use it. Like Bubble, just you can build. I think I'm guessing you can build mobile apps with Bubble and some of the other than no code, low code platforms.
I see.
Yeah, so that's really popular right now. Um,
I
you
have
know,
to do my homework on that.
yeah, yeah. I don't. I think mostly what I've been hearing there are potential security issues. You know, um, you know, and that, but um, I would think the platform is more where the quality assurance comes in at, but I know there potentially could be some issues with the way the founder used the application as well.
I think if even if it's no code and it's you still basically go through the the steps that we
Process. Yeah.
so yeah, the essentials are where you have the requirements, the analysis, the design, code testing, and deploy. So even when you're building it with the concept of no code, you still need to understand your requirements and
Hmm.
and to analyze it and what the design needs to be. And then from there, those are your testing strategy or the test plan that you would put in. And QA would need to test against those specifications or requirements. So it
Yeah, I got you. Yeah,
and I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah. So like in my case, like we use Coda, and you can, it's like a document, but you can actually build applications with it, and you definitely can make mistakes in there,
Mhm.
in your application there. And
Yeah. And I'm assuming that no code also applications often rely heavily on the user interface. So
yes, yes,
it's probably important to go through testing all the UI aspects as well. So
yes, that's exactly right.
consistency in design, ease of use, responsiveness, especially
Mhm.
if it's on depending if it's on a desktop, you want to check for responsiveness of the application because I worked for an enterprise company that had a website builder. It was a very complex website builder, and you would upload images based on the sizes. So you would upload small, medium, and large.
Mhm.
And even though I had specified small, medium, large, when I would actually resize to check the responsiveness on the Chrome browser, the medium and the large would just disappear.
Wow.
The
Okay.
image would just disappear, so it wouldn't even exist. So um,
Gotcha. Yeah. And so, like, the next question I was going to ask, how has uh, the OpenAI and ChatGPT type things affected quality assurance? When it comes to like software stuff, because you having it right code, or is it making your job easier, or what?
is the question pertaining to like what my thought process about these new technologies and developments?
Well, so like, so in the QA role,
Mhm.
like how are they? So like I could see how they're affecting software developers. They're helping um, generate code, you know, for software development to help them produce stuff faster, maybe. But I was just curious how is it affecting the QA, part of it.
Okay. Um, so
You
I
hadn't thought about it?
So in my search for
Okay,
or looking through job descriptions, there's a couple of startups that I came across involving QA testing and AI development. So
okay,
basically, they're using artificial intelligence to go through the various steps to do the testing.
gotcha. Okay,
So I think it has a long way to go in its development process before it impacts the nature of how we do quality testing now.
okay.
I don't see it ever replacing the jobs. I don't know. I feel like there's like this wave or concern that it would replace jobs.
Hmm. Hmm.
From my perspective, what that's going to happen is as a QA, I have to now scale my set of skills,
Yes.
which is why I decided to pursue Python that I have under my belt. So from Python, then I can learn artificial AI, understanding deep learning and how to create those models, etc. So it's just a matter of making sure I hone in on those set of skills because at some point QA would be managing and teaching the machine to do the QA work.
Hmm. Yes.
So there will always still be that human individual there, but instead of me doing now the automation, I'm having to maintain the machine to maintain the automation.
Yes, yes, yeah. And that's why I say it's a tool to help you do your job better and
Yeah.
faster, and extend your capability, to kind of do that. But I have a strong feeling that at least for ChatGPT 4, like if you understand how to use it, you could probably have it do some test generation based on your design spec or, or whatever. I don't know, but I'm guessing the what I've seen so far. So I can't wait to try this. I came up with this idea this morning. So I have some code. Let's say it's JavaScript, but I want that it's a function. So let's say I want that same function in Python. So I
Mhm.
can't wait to log on to Chat GPT-4 and said, I have this script and a function in JavaScript. Can you reproduce it in Python?
Mhm.
And just see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I've even seen developers use Chat, OpenAI, this
Yeah.
ChatGPT, to produce the set of codes that they need for building a website.
Yeah. So like I had the same function, as a JavaScript function. I said, can you build me a web application, for this function? And then, I described what the function was. And then it told me to paste the code in. And so I pasted the function code in, and then it created the web application. And then it generates the code, and then it says paste your function here.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, then I uploaded it to the website, and it wasn't perfect, but it actually
it
did
works.
work. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but it's just it's just I think that's really the message is it actually is a tool to help your job, help you do your job better.
Yeah. I think it's very definitely useful for startups, but then also you want to think of like time and money.
Yes.
Uh, when you're a especially if you're an engineer and you're a developer, you're focused on developing the feature, and you need to kind of pump out code
Oh
because you
yeah.
want to get it done. So sometimes I wonder how much are they going to really use it for thinking with testability. I hope they would.
Yeah, yeah, you can bet. And so, like, I signed up for this newsletter that curate all these new AI applications that maybe built off OpenAI or whatever. And it's amazing what they're doing, but it's also neat to kind of look at some of these applications and 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 kind of get ideas, how you can, use some of these no code applications to kind of recreate the same thing,
Yeah.
and to move forward. But yeah, there's no shortage of startups out there that are building applications to make our lives easier, and to move forward. And so
Yeah.
that's why we need to make sure people know these best practices, learn all this stuff in this ecosystem to kind of move forward. So you got any parting thoughts you want to share with the founders?
Um, I think I I guess what I would like to share with everybody first, thank you for being here. It's actually really nice, and thank you for having me. I
Yes.
think as you think through your MVP or your development process, I think you nailed it in the beginning when you mentioned that you've seen developers go through the process where they've developed code, then they have to hire another developer, and then the issue with that is there's burnout. Like
Yes.
as startups, we can quickly go through burnout because it's as the name alludes, start up, rise up, right? It's a shift
Yeah.
in mindset, it's a shift in behavior, it's a shift in dedication, resilience, commitment. So try to think about testability up front, educate yourself about it. If the whole thing is confusing, you can always reach out to me. Like, not every, I'd be more than happy to help. And we can talk about, start thinking about when I hire a developer or when I'm building out something, what is the non-negotiables that must work?
Yes.
And write those down. Even if it's a Google Excel spreadsheet, write them down. It will really serve you well in the future. So
Yeah. And I also think like your co-founder, if your co-founder is your developer, then you as a founder or co-founder, you want to make sure that developer is following these best practices as well.
Yes. Yeah. It's part of the contract. Make sure you have contracts in place,
Yes.
detailed out. Use a management tool like Jira. That way you can track and be able to see that the developer is actually moving things onward, or that things are getting done. Have visibility towards the work that's being done is very important.
Okay. Yeah, that's good advice. All righty. Well, we sure appreciate you coming on such short notice, and I think this would definitely be a valuable um, presentation to show. And I also was going to recommend that, in the fall here, I don't know if you're aware, we have the I-10 Wire conference. It's like a 2 or 3 day conference,
Oh,
and
cool.
so that I think it would be good for you to actually present, some QA stuff there. So
Okay.
yeah, I'll make sure you get the link, and they're actually requesting speakers right now. So
Okay, cool. And this is here in Pensacola, local?
yeah, out on Pensacola Beach. Yeah,
Wow, right around the corner. This is fascinating.
yes. So yeah, so we'll make sure you get well connected in here and see what's going on, and we'll put you to work too. Yeah.
Happy to help.
All righty. You take care, and thanks everybody for joining out there. We'll see you all next week, and just go out there and build something and get some more customers, get some
Yeah.
traction going there. All right. Bye bye, everyone.
Bye.